No idea why it didn't load, but I'm glad it did now. So again, I'm Pam Marr with KMK Media Group, starting over, and so glad that I could talk to you all today about MRC and how to market your unit, because I'm guessing that is not your full-time job that you think about 24/7. So having some ideas and some tips and out-of-the-box thoughts on how to move your particular unit forward in public awareness is always a welcome idea and opportunity. We have been blessed to work with MRC for the past, about a year, maybe not quite a year now. Um, and as we have been doing that, let me advance this. Is it moving forward for you? There you go. If you've seen this, which is a billboard, or these, which are displays, exhibit boards for like expos and things, here's a brochure. You'll see that soon, I think, and some social media and other graphics. If you've seen any of those, then you've already met us and our marketing work, because we were fortunate to work with the state board and with Jeanette and Bethany on creating those to really raise awareness at the statewide level. But that is one thing. Doing it in your own individual communities is a little bit different. So just a little bit quickly about our company, KMK Media Group. I'm the president and CEO. We are a marketing communications agency. We are state certified, woman-owned business. We've been in business for over 25 years. Actually, this year, later in the year, will be 27. We have over 100 active clients, which keep us very, very busy, including Merkel. And 90% of our business is repeat and referral. And where I am right now giving this presentation is within the building that you see there on your screen, which is our office, which is in downtown Rockford, Illinois, in the northern part of the state. This is our team. We have 8 team members, 4 men, 4 women. They range in age from their 20s to their 60s. We've got single people and parents and grandparents and people who come from all different walks of life. Some live in more urban areas, some live in more rural areas. So we're really blessed to have a team that is very diverse in their thoughts and their experiences. And we draw on that when we're working with community-based organizations. We also, I like to call them, or they think they are, the most important members of our team, which are the 2 furry friends right there. Those are my dogs, and I bring them to the office every day. There's 12-year-old Riley, who is a golden retriever, and then 4-year-old Russell, who was what I guess has been now termed a COVID puppy. We were home all the time, me and my husband and my 3 kids. And, the kids are like, oh, wouldn't it be great to get a tiny dog? Okay, not the best idea, but he's a great little dog, but he's got a big personality, and we'll just leave it at that. But they're great in the office, great stress relievers, and they are lying at my feet right now. So hopefully they will be quiet and well behaved while we continue the rest of the presentation today. Here is just a quick overview of a few clients that we currently work with. These are all active clients. So there's school districts, there's banks, there's government organizations, there's hospitals, there's medical practices. There's just a whole host of different kinds of clients that we work with day in and day out. And although they span many, many different industries, there are a lot of commonalities in that all of these businesses too want to get out the message about who they are, what they do to their target audience to best do that. One of our clients here who keeps us very busy right now is on the top right-hand side, toward the top right, Hard Rock Casino. When Governor Pritzker signed the gambling legislation into law in 2019, he allocated 6 state licenses for new casinos. And so we went ahead and were hired by Hard Rock after they won the Rockford license. And so we've been very busy with them the past 4 years, helping them gear up. And eventually they're, the end of this summer, they're going to be opening the permanent casino here in Rockford. So that's kind of given us a taste a little bit, sort of like Merkel in some ways, of working with organizations across the entire state and even nationwide with Hard Rock. So it's exciting to work with so many different types of clients, and we, again, are very fortunate to work with Merkel. So as I mentioned, we work with nonprofits and government organizations, volunteer-driven organizations, and organizations with little to no marketing budget, which probably feels all of those things a little bit like what you guys are doing right now for your individual units. So how do we help you? The first question is, how do you make the most of the story that you have to tell? In Bethany's lead-in to the presentation today, she just talked about sending her photos and stories so that she can put them on the website. And that all leads to that storytelling of who you are and what you do with each of your individual units. So the first thing that I always recommend is defining why you want to tell your story. We know you have a story to tell, even if you're scratching your head right now saying, okay, what kind of story am I supposed to be telling? But everyone does have a story to tell. We have to figure out for your particular unit why you want to tell that story or what the benefits are of doing that. So first, public awareness. I have to confess that when we started working with the MRC, we didn't really know much about it. And so we had to do our research and really find out more. And that kind of added fuel to the fire of why we really need to market MRC on a statewide level, and then obviously in each of your own communities too. So public awareness, just so people are familiar with the term and what you do. And then increasing community partnerships. So there's probably a lot of organizations out there that would be natural partners for you in your community, but you certainly don't, I'm sure, have the time to reach out to all of them all the time. But if they knew that you existed and you were there to support and help their organizations, those partnerships would very organically build. And so being able to raise and tell your story and raise awareness helps with forging some of those community partnerships. Recruiting volunteers, any nonprofit or even government to some degree organization that I've worked with has always needed more community activists, more volunteers, more people involved in their initiative. That's kind of like an ongoing need. And so anytime you tell your story, recruiting volunteers is certainly something that's going to help drive that. Engaging volunteers. Maybe there's volunteers that, have been involved in the past and aren't as involved right now, or maybe there's new volunteers that you're just trying to figure out, how do I draw them in a little bit more? How do I make them feel more engaged and part of the process? So that can also be a benefit to telling your story out there publicly. And then rewarding and recognizing those volunteers. So, for instance, when you have volunteers who are doing their best to help your unit day in and day out, month after month, and maybe some of them year after year, there's no cash prize, there's no bonus, there's nothing for being a volunteer other than a thank you a lot of times. But sometimes it goes a long way if you can reward and recognize them publicly. Not all volunteers like that. But those that do, often it just is that little extra pat on the back that will keep them motivated to continue volunteering with your organization. And then finally, another reason to tell your story about what you're doing is to announce upcoming events. Maybe you've got something that's coming up in the community that you're excited about, that you're going to be partnering with other organizations, and you just really want to make sure that you've got a good turnout. So of course, announcing that and telling your story on a little bit broader scale to get more attendees and a better turnout is another great reason to tell your story. So how do you begin? You can't do it all yourself, right? That's why you have volunteers. And you all, from what I understand, most of you all have day jobs, and this is a portion of what you do in your very, very busy days and weeks. So you can't do it yourself. So the first thing that I always recommend for volunteer organizations who are looking to market is, do you have any volunteers currently who have a day job that involves marketing? So maybe it's somebody who does social media for their job or works with local news media. Maybe they do PR or in-house corporate communications for their organization. Maybe it's a local instructor at a community college who teaches any of the marketing skill sets. Or maybe it's a photographer or a videographer. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone professional either who does it for a living. It could be an amateur photographer, videographer, somebody that you've noticed who just has a real passion and enjoyment of doing social media. And they would be a great person if you reached out and asked them. Now, it's possible too that you don't feel like you really know the volunteers well enough to have that conversation, or maybe there's new folks and you're really not quite sure what their skill sets are or how they might be able to be part of it. And pardon me if you've already done this, some of you, but you can certainly survey volunteers, and there's many tools out there to allow you to do that. Again, Bethany's recording this, so you'll be able to jot down these links later or go visit them. But there's 3 different resources that I put on the screen here that should help you if you decide you do want to do a quick volunteer survey. It doesn't have to be real time consuming, doesn't have to be real involved, but it helps you fine tune where those particular skill sets within your unit may come from, that you can get that support to help get your message out. So for instance, the first one there is an organization that does a series of blogs about volunteering, and they've got some great rationale and questions on doing volunteer surveys. Very, very helpful. The second one is free survey templates through questionpro.com. And believe it or not, they actually have one that is nonprofit volunteer skills survey template. So an actual survey that's built for you that has a lot of those questions. So you could modify it, but it's a great resource and it's free. And then the last one is something that many of us maybe have used already in some way, shape, or form, but it's SurveyMonkey. So you can take questions that you've developed elsewhere and obviously populate them into SurveyMonkey and do a free survey that way too. So great resources there to help gauge the interest and skill sets of your volunteers. If you do decide that you want to do a volunteer survey, I always say instead of surveying multiple times or asking questions multiple times, step back a little and say, okay, are there other questions that I could ask at the same time? And again, maybe you've already done this, but if you're already doing a survey, you might as well ask non-marketing questions, things that are going to help your unit be even more successful, like the best meeting times, event times, if you're trying to get volunteers to be part of something that you have going on. Maybe they have a friend who might like to volunteer, which of course is the bonus, having a friend, because then if you have a lot of people who say, you know, there are some people I could probably invite, maybe you decide to do a specific volunteer recruitment event for your unit and schedule that sooner rather than later if you have several people who are interested in bringing someone. Maybe some of your volunteers have ideas on community partnerships. They know of a school or maybe a YMCA or some other community organization that would really benefit from a joint effort with your MRC unit. And then maybe they have suggestions on unit activities, things that your unit could be doing that they would like to be involved with. I always say with any volunteer survey or any survey that you're doing, aiming for maybe 10 to 15 questions is a good starting point. And you don't have to do it online. These are online resources that help compile all of the answers and the data. And so it kind of streamlines the output for you at the backside, but it doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You could easily do this on a piece of paper too. It'll just take obviously a little more time to go through those and kind of compile all of the information. So once you have done your survey or you've identified your volunteers who are going to help you with your outreach and your marketing efforts, the next step is to make a plan. And, you know, that can sound kind of overwhelming. Oh my gosh, I have to make a marketing plan. No, it's not like I'm not suggesting a full-fledged marketing plan because that would be overwhelming. But just thinking about maybe a few key activities or initiatives that you want to do throughout the next year. I always say plan 6 to 12 months in advance if you can. Maybe one opportunity a quarter. So maybe you're coming up with 4 events for the next year. And by events, I don't necessarily mean activities, but maybe marketing initiatives. And I'll give you some examples of those as we move along. You want to keep it reasonable and something that you're able to actually add to the list of things that you're already doing for your MRC unit with the help of your key volunteers, and that you can feel at the end like you accomplished it. It wasn't so overwhelming that you were doing one thing a month and it ended up just being overwhelming that you had too much to do. So I always say start small. You can always add on and add initiatives and ideas as you go. And maybe when you think about the things that you want to do, you think about, okay, what can I do seasonally? You know, maybe you're already doing something in the community over the summertime or the holiday season. Maybe it's with a food pantry or whatever. That would be a perfect opportunity if you've always done it to think, okay, how am I going to promote that a little bit more? How am I going to use that as a stepping off point to perhaps recruit more volunteers, especially if it's something that you already have going on that you can kind of piggyback on that with some actual marketing initiatives as well. Maybe it's something event driven or goal driven. You take a look at the goals that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. And if one of your key goals is to reward your volunteers, you think about something that we're going to talk about today that would help accomplish that. And that's one of your 3 or 4 things that you try to do during the year. So coming up with a simple key plan of a few things that you want to accomplish. Then's the fun part, developing ideas and getting creative, and always aiming for no cost, low cost when you can, so that you're not expending a lot of resources and obviously money because it's not necessarily there, but there's a lot you can do without having a large marketing budget. So what I did, a little bit David Letterman style, was come up with a top 10 list of marketing your MRC ideas, some things that you can do, and hopefully some of these will pique your interest and might make sense within your own MRC unit. So number 10, an email blast, email marketing. A lot of times volunteer organizations will send out emails, especially smaller organizations will send out emails using Outlook. And that works to a certain extent, but there are other probably more effective ways to do it that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. And maybe some of the organizations you work for in your day jobs already do some of this, but Constant Contact is a very well-known email marketing platform, and they have plans that are as low as $12 a month. MailChimp is another one out there, and they actually have a free tier of service for nonprofits and organizations, which does have a limit. It has a cap of 1,000 recipients per month. If you get up to 1,000, that's awesome. That's a good problem to have. But MailChimp is where a lot of places start, and we have several clients using it who have been very happy with it. So that's another platform that you can use. If you do go with one of the paid versions, like the Constant Contact for $12 a month, a lot of the paid versions do allow a little more autonomy in how you set up that email service. So for instance, when you're setting it up, you don't have to just blast the same email message to everyone. You're able to set it up in lists. So maybe there's a list you have for volunteers, and maybe there's a list for prospective volunteers. Maybe there's a list for community partner organizations or event attendees, or maybe media contacts. So you're wanting to work with your local news media a little bit more and make it as streamlined as possible. So setting up a distribution list of email addresses and names for media contacts could be a good resource for you. So that it benefits a little bit when you have a paid version. Most of the unpaid versions don't allow you to do that. But that again is totally up to you. But that way you're able to really tailor your message for the audience that you're trying to reach. So the secret benefits of email blast using a program like that rather than Outlook is when you send out an email to all of your volunteers, you can tell right away through one of those programs if you have any bad email addresses. So if people have bad email addresses, you obviously don't have, you can take them off or call them and say, no wonder you haven't been coming to my events. Obviously the email address is bad. You must have changed emails. We can update that. Also, when you send out those marketing emails, you can discover how many people opened your e-blast. So if you're sending out emails to your volunteers, you can actually see when they opened them. So not only how many opened the email and looked at it, but when they opened it and who opened it. So if any of you get emails now from, companies out there, retailers, they can really glean a lot of information from you opening up that email. They can see when you opened it, that you opened it, and they can actually see too what links that you clicked on, and you could see that as well. So if you include a link to the organization where you're going to be hosting an event, you're able to see that people clicked on that and there was some interest, which can be really helpful in figuring out going forward how you want to market to even just your volunteer base. Was there a question? I think I saw. Oh, free version of MailChimp. I see that there. Yes. Oh, well, the free version of MailChimp, good question. I would have to look. They change these plans all the time. The free version of MailChimp may offer now 2 distribution lists, not like the 5 that I was kind of showing you there as options, but I think they will still do a couple. Otherwise, it's very inexpensive to usually add one more. But a lot of those free plans when you start, initially we'll just do the one main list, and then you have to pay $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is, the more lists that you add as well. If you have questions about that afterward too, we can look more closely at that, or I can follow up on that too. Okay. Number 9, creating a social media page. This is actually a social media page from the Monroe County MRC, a little bit further south, I think near St. Louis, who has a page up there and is doing some content. Way to go, yay. Couple of things that you can do when you set up a social media page. Creating a consistent posting calendar is key, that you have information out there, helpful tips, photos and videos, that you tag people or organizations. And I'm going to stop on that for just a second. So backing up, when you set up a social media page, it really is very easy. It usually is correlated to your own. You personally have to have a Facebook page first before you can set up a separate page for an organization. But once you do that, it is really pretty simple to set it up. And this particular page, I think, has like close to 100 followers. I mean, it's a chance and it builds over time. But the only way that you're really going to get it to build over time is by still fueling it with some regular content. Because if you build it, they don't just come. You do have to make sure that the quality of the page is enough so that people will come to the page and engage with the page. So that's really important. And when I put in that first tactic there, tagging people. So if you have photos on your social media page, which I'm sure all of us see all the time on our personal pages, if you're able to tag organizations or individuals, then that particular post shows up on those individuals or organizations' pages, which is awesome because then it's just spreading your word a little bit further to people who are probably not fans or followers of your own social media page. High quality content and photos and images and videos always is going to get more eyeballs than just text, than just written text. So anytime you can add a fun photo, video, or graphic, it's going to do a better job for you in ROI on the backside. You can also do Facebook ads to gain awareness. And again, those can be really inexpensive too. You can do Facebook ads around a geographic area. So for instance, you don't want to blast something all across the whole state. You of course want to be centric to your unit. So you can do usually a radius or a zip code around your particular region, so that those ads are getting pushed to the people who are going to be most beneficial to you as potential volunteers or attendees at events and things. You can also a lot of times even drill down a little more specifically when you're running those Facebook ads, not just geographically, but even professionally. So if you're looking for people that are in the healthcare profession, or you're looking for educators, or certain types of people with certain skill sets, which can help you if you have a gap in your volunteer line of a certain skill set, this might be able to help you with targeting who some of those folks might be in your region. So great opportunities there. A couple other best practices for social media. This happens to be the social media page in Dutchess County, New York. I was just looking out there for all sorts of MRCs that had Facebook pages. They do a phenomenal job. So if you haven't set up a Facebook page yet for your MRC, you might just take a quick peek at Dutchess County in New York and just see what they're doing, because it really is amazing. They're doing great quality content. Their posts are very frequent and not just blasting out that, hey, it's, National Men's Health Month or national this or national that. They're actually doing a lot of photos and posts on what they're doing in the community, and that's making it so engaging. They have over 1,000 followers on their page. So best practices: using compelling visuals, high quality images and videos to showcase the impact of what you're doing. Then remaining consistent. We talked about this, making sure that you're posting regularly and that the branding and messaging is consistent across all of those posts. Engaging, not broadcasting. The one benefit with social media compared to, for instance, newspaper ads or television ads or radio ads or things that, of course, cost a whole lot more money too. But the difference with social media is that you can have a conversation with your audience. The folks who are following your page or who see your content, they may have questions, they may have comments, they may like a post. That's awesome because it gives you some immediate feedback and some engagement, but it also allows you then to go back and answer that question or make that additional comment or say thank you or appreciate them. And what that does is it starts a conversation, fosters a sense of community, builds trust with those folks, and that just helps you with, again, promoting awareness and telling the story of what your unit is doing. So social media, in my opinion, is a great way to start, and there probably is someone, I hope, within your unit who has a little familiarity with social media and can help you get that started. Number 8, hold a healthcare event where you can show what you do. Maybe some of you are already doing this. This happened to be one in Fairfax County, Virginia. You can tell they've got their nice shirts on and their lanyards and their materials. And I thought it's cool, even their tablecloth kind of meshes with the logo a little bit. So they're really trying to brand themselves and to communicate and tell others what they're doing. So obviously it develops awareness, opportunity right there if you wanted to solicit volunteers. You could invite the media if it's like a health fair or something. Media is often wants to attend that type of thing, and then especially in more rural areas. And then posting on social media, great posts for social media that can come from this type of a healthcare event. Number 7, ask your mayor to give a public proclamation declaring it your town MRC Day. This is usually pretty easy to do, happens a lot easier in smaller communities than larger communities. About, boy, 13, 14 years ago, I helped start a volunteer driven nonprofit organization here in Northern Illinois. And we were trying to kind of get the word out and get, the boots on the ground and start moving things forward. And the organization that I helped start had to do with a healthcare issue. And so there happened to be that month designated on the national calendar, National ABC Awareness Month or whatever. And so I contacted our local mayor and I said, hey, could we come to your city council meeting and could you do a proclamation? And oh, they were all for it because it's good PR for them too. It's super easy to do. The media covered it. We were able to put it on social. I mean, it's a great way to be able to get some community recognition and then secondarily get, for instance, social and oftentimes some of the leaders in your community who happen to be there. I've seen it done, not just in cities, but in villages and townships. And so it's certainly something you could look at doing if that made sense for you. Number 6, write a guest editorial to your local newspaper. So this happens to be in Cold Spring, New York, and this was an article written, a letter to the editor that was written in 2022. And it was someone who was just thanking the Medical Reserve Corps in their community for everything that they had done during COVID. And there was a lot of this, obviously, during COVID. There was a chance to really thank those instrumental volunteers who made so much happen in all of our communities. But there's so much more that you're all doing now that just because COVID is, kind of winding down in a different way, not that we don't have it, of course, but that we're managing it a little bit better. What are other opportunities out there that we can now use to have folks talk about the impact that you had with their organization or in your community? Local newspapers are usually often looking for those types of community input. Again, this works a little bit better in a smaller community than a larger community, but it's an opportunity that's out there that is usually very easy to do. So it's something that you might consider if you haven't done it already. Number 5, list your unit with community organizations. So I don't know if all of your communities have something like this, but our United Way, who covers several counties in our northern part of the state of Illinois, we have a website in our community that United Way sponsors and maintains that's called We Volunteer, and it's a volunteer agency database. So basically, if you have a nonprofit organization or just an organization that needs more volunteers, You can list your organization there on the page with the types of volunteer opportunities you have. And then volunteers can go on that site, people who are looking for community volunteer opportunities, and they can scroll through the opportunities that are available and find one that works for them. And hopefully it makes a match. So it's actually, I think, a great idea in helping people find resources and volunteer opportunities that fit their interest areas. And again, I don't know if all United Ways across the state have this, but it certainly is something to check out if yours does, and see if there's an opportunity to list yourselves there so that you use that resource as well if it exists in your community. News media, making news media aware of an interesting volunteer that you might have within your unit. This happened to be an article that was online and in a print edition, happened to be in the Tacoma Washington News Tribune just a couple of months ago. And it featured an Army doc who was retired. And he, of course, had been a war hero and just had a really illustrious career. And then he went on to start the first MRC in that community, 20 some years ago, and did a great job. And then retired from that and ended up volunteering for the MRC unit, and just was really impactful in getting that unit off the ground in that community. And so when he was finally retiring, I want to say he was well in his 90s a few months back, they did a beautiful feature on him. And not to say every volunteer has that type of a history, but you probably do have some volunteers within your unit who have interesting stories to tell. Maybe it's somebody who has been a volunteer for a long time. Maybe it's somebody who is a generational volunteer. So maybe they had, maybe they're volunteering and now they've got a child or grandchild. I mean, it's always nice to see that continue as well if it's able to. Or maybe there's someone who's had a really interesting experience as an MRC volunteer in your unit. So being able to step back a minute and say, hey, I think, the media might find this person really interesting, and would also at the same time do a great job promoting our particular unit and what we're doing, and that we're always looking for volunteers and ways to impact our community. It serves so many purposes when you're able to highlight a volunteer, also recognizes and rewards that volunteer that we talked about earlier too, another objective, thanking them for a job well done. Hosting a community-based event. Maybe some of you have already done this. This happens to be a flyer from Bloomington, Indiana, for an MRC meet and greet that they did in December. I don't know if I would necessarily always suggest a volunteer kind of meet and greet in December, which is usually a really busy month in people's calendars, but apparently it worked for them, and they set that out there. Getting your unit to talk about what they do and why they volunteer, and what they get out of it, the impact, the joy, the reward that they feel being part of your unit is always great. And like we said in that volunteer survey, if you decide to do that, asking if people have a friend that they would like to invite. If you have enough of those, that might encourage you to do some type of a meet and greet earlier than you might have otherwise. That's also something that you can usually send to your local media, and they may stop by, or at least may promote the fact on their media website that you're doing the event, to help get the word out on community calendars and those sorts of things. Other events where you can interact and engage with people that are free or very budget friendly. You could do a walkathon. And again, it's a chance to connect with the community, to promote a little bit about what your unit's doing. It could be a free venue like a public park or a hiking trail, and it could promote healthy lifestyles. You could hand out water bottles. I mean, there's all kinds of things that, you could do, but a walkathon would certainly be one option. A webinar like we're doing today, leading an online seminar, showcases what your unit's doing in the community. So maybe it's a particular interest area of your unit too, food insecurity. Maybe you're working with some food pantries and doing some other things, webinars showing community-based approaches. Again, just a way to get out your message and what you're actually doing in the community that's having an impact. And then community service projects. So, for instance, organizing a community-wide event, people could come and join you, sign up to help. Maybe it's just a one-day thing, but it's a chance to open that door. It's a chance to populate your email list with some new names and email addresses. Could be cleaning parks, planting trees, painting buildings. It's gathering support and awareness and making a positive impression on the community. Those types of events are also the kinds of events that media love to cover. And so that's just a bonus to being able to do something like that. Number two, a timely media interview. So, NPR, talk radio, if you have those in your particular community, are great options, but also smaller town community newspapers are great. And if you're in a community the size of Rockford that happens to have three network, four network TV stations, that just opens the door a little bit wider to some other media opportunities. And you might think to yourself, well, gosh, what am I going to talk about? And when would I plan to do this? And well, you can do it around, emergency preparedness. You can do it around the 9/11 anniversary. You could do it around storm season, tornado season's approaching back in March and April. What can you do to be prepared? You could do it around flu and COVID shots. When is it time to gear up for those? So just more of community awareness and providing sort of that expert interview on what your unit is doing to help support the community in some of those initiatives. But, the media is often looking for people to talk about those topics. And then number one, using your own connections. So many times we're going through our days and we don't think that, oh, my neighbor could really help with this. Or, I've got someone at school or church that would be a perfect connection. Maybe not necessarily a perfect volunteer, but somebody that could make a connection for you, for instance, to the media, because they happen to work in sales there or something. There's a lot of times that we have connections, I think, that we just don't step back and say, oh, that would work perfectly, and then reach out and ask. Now, the asking part can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming and hard to do too. So, just one strategy that I've seen nonprofits do very successfully. It's a little old fashioned. We're talking about all kinds of digital communication, but this is an old fashioned one. It's just wearing an old fashioned button. Button it up and talk it up. So, an old fashioned button that says, Ask me about MRC. You're just trying to have a conversation starter, a way for you to wear it day in and day out, or, not 24/7 necessarily, but when you're out in the community so that people can ask you about it. I did it for a nonprofit that I was on the board of several years ago, and it's amazing that people do stop, they look at the button, and they ask you, "Well, tell me about that organization." It's a chance just to spread awareness. There's a lot of online resources that can make buttons for you. You probably have providers, promotional companies in your communities, and then you can even go on Amazon, of course, and purchase a button maker and do it that way yourself. I think they're like $80 to $100. So, good opportunity to just help you start that conversation if it's hard to do it out of the blue, which I understand. Couple more minutes. How to engage the media. Assuming you don't know any local reporters, anchors, news producers, those kinds of folks, look on the media's website, newspaper's website, or your television station or local radio station. Look for what's called a newsroom contact. That's usually the person or the email address that you want to reach out to. You can email also a specific reporter or the newsroom generically, and that works well too. If you do know a specific reporter, or maybe there's somebody that you really like reading their articles or watching them on TV, it never hurts to lead with that as well. It's also okay to send your news, if you've got news, a story you want to tell, it's okay to send it to multiple news outlets. Maybe they'll all cover the event, or maybe just one will, which is fine, but you up your odds of getting coverage the more you send it to, obviously. Keep your email short, to the point, informative. How do media like to be contacted? Studies have shown usually it's email or a quick phone call. And if you send email and you don't hear anything, certainly feel free to follow up with a phone call. When you send that email to them, answer, those 5 W's: who you are, what organization you're representing, and what's happening, where the event is happening, when, and then why should this reporter or their viewers or readers care about that particular event. So answering just briefly those questions certainly helps increase your chances of getting coverage. Really quickly, this this is a picture of avid Cub fans, a man and a woman who happened to be friends of ours, who were getting married outside Wrigley Field in Chicago in 2018. They were just, like I said, huge Cubs fans. They knew when they were getting married, that's where they wanted to get married. They had dated in high school in Rockford and then went their separate ways all across the country. They reconnected 25 years later, and the groom had brain cancer. So they wanted to maximize the time that they had together. I was invited to the wedding because they were friends of my husband's. But I thought, as I knew this whole story, I thought, oh my gosh, I said, this is such an inspirational story. I would think Chicago news media would be interested in this. So I okayed it with the bride and the groom. I didn't know any reporters in Chicago at that time, but I reached out. And, I went to their web pages and reached out, and we got the Chicago Sun-Times there, and we got one of the television stations. I think the ABC was the one that showed up from downtown Chicago. And it was a wonderful story. This gentleman passed away from brain cancer, I think about 18 months later. But now that family has these wonderful stories that are captured of that day and the impact that it had on them. And then also, obviously, on the people who attended and all of the viewers who saw or read that story later on. So you don't necessarily have to have a contact to the media in order to be able to make that connection. You just have to be aware of what might be an interesting or compelling human interest story that allows you to open the door to making that connection. Couple last screens. What affects success? If you're in a rural community versus an urban community, you obviously have different opportunities for media exposure. So that's just going to be a moot point. It is what it is. You can't change it, but it does affect what you're able to do. If you have a volunteer with marketing experience or no marketing experience, again, it doesn't matter that you're not going to be successful. It just may take a little ramp up time. Timing of what you're doing. I mentioned at the start of the call that we're working for Hard Rock. Last week, we were finally announcing the opening date of the casino here in Rockford. Big news. At least I thought it was going to be big news. But that particular day was also the same day when, unfortunately, 3 sheriff's deputies were shot in a house raid in Ogle County, which made not only local news, but statewide news and national news. So although the Hard Rock announcement was still picked up by the media, it was much further down in the television and news coverage that day than it otherwise might have been. And you can't obviously predict breaking news, but you can say, okay, I'm probably not going to talk to reporters or try to bother them for news coverage on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Or I'm probably not going to do it, for instance, on election day because they're going to be otherwise busy covering other things that day. So knowing timing is a good way to handle that. And then making sure you have a visual element because pictures tell a story much better than just words do. The more visual that you can make it, the better. Finally, measure. How do you know that it's successful? Well, obviously, you can see your billboards when they're up. You can see your television PSA commercials. You can hear your radio spots. You can see your newspaper ads. You can see your social media, but how do you know if it's working? Social media is a great way to actually track if it's working. This is a sample of a report that we give our clients, usually quarterly, that shows cumulatively how their social media is growing. This comes through the insights on the backside of your page. Anyone that has access to the page can see these results, and it shows you how your followers are growing and how many eyeballs you have on your posts, and how many people, if you're doing paid ads, how many of those are getting recognized and by how many people. And so it's a great, very statistical and measurable way to check how you're doing with getting the word out there. But then also polling your new volunteers. How did you hear about us? Maybe it was a news story that you helped put out there or an email that you sent out. And then how is your volunteer retention now versus before you started doing any type of marketing or communications? Are you noticing a difference? You're probably not going to notice it overnight. But in the 6 to 12 months from when you started, that's a great time to kind of look back. But of course, you have to be looking and measuring that to be able to tell if it's having any difference. And then again, try again. Not all of us succeed on the first time out, even those of us who do marketing for a living. So if something doesn't work and you're measuring it and you're saying, nope, it's not working, you can always change direction a little bit and try something different. But measuring is going to really be key to helping you know what's having the most impact. And my dogs were quiet at my feet while we're doing this. Yay. So put that there. Thank you. So very happy that we were able to talk with you all today. And I'm sorry for the little hiccup with in the beginning there with trying to get it rolling, but I'm glad that we finally did. I'm going to go to hopefully stop share now, if it'll let me. I think it's just my computer today. But while I'm doing that, does anyone have any questions?
Feel free to unmute yourselves or type your questions in the chat and we can go over those. Pam, thank you so much for a fabulous presentation. And for those of you on the call, this will be recorded, posted on YouTube, and we will send these materials out as well. Looks like we have a couple typing in the chat.
Good.
That was a lot of great information, Pam. Thank you.
Great. Yes, absolutely.
So, Pam, would you be willing to share your contact information? That way unit leaders can reach out to you if they have any questions.
Yes, of course.
Okay. I didn't think you'd mind, but
no, not at all. Okay, I just put my email there. That's the quickest way, but of course that has our website address, so you can get our phone number or whatever you want to.
Fabulous.
Happy to answer questions, especially because I know each unit and each geography and demographics and all that, it's going to be a little different for each one.
Anybody have any questions in regards to the presentation today? I promise Pam doesn't bite. She's very sweet. Okay, if not, her contact information is below. If for some reason you misplaced the email, like I said, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jeanette. We both have her contact information, and we can send it to you at any time. Otherwise, oh, I see someone typing in the chat. I want to make sure I give individuals plenty of time to ask questions. So, oh, thank you so much, Sharon.
Oh.
Sharon says, excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, just as a reminder, we will have our next webinar next month, third Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. And we will be, you should already have the calendar invitation for that. If for some reason you don't, please make sure and reach out to me. And I'll be sending a reminder out to everybody just to let everybody know. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks again for inviting me. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Bye-bye.